He lost everything. His house, his car, his job. His wife even left him. I watched it all happen from a quiet corner of the courtroom, my heart racing. The same man who stood in front of the entire office just 8 months ago and smugly smiled as he fired me, now stood there trembling, begging the judge for mercy. Please, Your Honor. I'm telling the truth. I was set up. That was Rich. He'd said the exact same words about me to HR. I wanted to feel bad. I really did. But then I remembered how he made me feel. Powerless. Hopeless. Like I was nothing. Like I deserved to be tossed away after everything I'd done for the company. Now, it was his turn. And he knew it too. The moment our eyes met, his face drained of color. But how did we get here? How does a quiet, obedient employee like me end up watching my boss's life fall apart, piece by piece, all because he made one big mistake? He thought I wouldn't fight back. It all started one rainy Tuesday morning. I remember that day so well, not because of anything crazy happening at first, but because everything was just ordinary. The kind of day you barely remember. I was running late, spilled coffee on my shirt, had to change, missed the earlier bus. When I got to work, my manager, Ben, gave me that fake smile of his and said, "Glad you could finally join us, Ethan." I chuckled politely, not realizing that would be one of the last times I'd smile around him. At the time, I was working at a medium-sized software company in Seattle. I'd been there for almost 6 years. I wasn't the flashiest, but I was reliable. I fixed problems, helped coworkers, stayed late, came in early. I loved what I did, and I took pride in it. Ben had only joined the company a year ago. Young, flashy, always talking about his vision and throwing around buzzwords like synergy and optimization like they meant something. He didn't care much for the actual work. He was more interested in looking good than being good. Still, I didn't have any real issue with him, at least, not at first. But things changed slowly. It started with little things. Ben taking credit for my ideas in meetings, making weird comments about me being too quiet to be a leader. Then, he started giving me impossible deadlines, only to swoop in at the last minute and save the day by assigning extra help, which he then took credit for too. I remember one time I stayed late for 3 nights trying to debug a new system that our client desperately needed fixed. Ben said it wasn't a priority. When it finally broke down in the middle of a demo, Ben blamed me in front of the client, then promised them he would fix it. He fixed nothing. I did. Again. But by then, I could see the pattern. I should have spoken up, but I kept telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. That I could outwork the problem. That people like Ben always got exposed eventually. Spoiler, they don't. Not unless someone makes it happen. One day, things got worse. I got called into HR for something urgent. Sitting across from me was Maria, head of human resources, and Ben, grinning like he was about to get a promotion. "We have to talk about something serious," Maria said gently, as if she was prepping me for a funeral. Turns out, Ben had reported me for serious misconduct. Allegedly, I'd been caught accessing client files without permission, sending confidential information to external sources, and forging time logs to show I worked hours I hadn't. I laughed at first. I thought it was some kind of mistake. I don't even know how to fake a time log. But then they showed me emails, logs, even a report signed with my name. I was stunned. Everything looked real. Only, it wasn't. "I didn't do any of this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But Ben leaned forward and said, "Then how do you explain the paper trail, Ethan?" I couldn't. I was suspended that same day while the investigation continued. I felt like I was walking through a nightmare. I went home numb. I didn't know what to tell my mom, who I'd been helping financially since her surgery. I didn't know how to explain it to my friends. I just shut down. 2 weeks later, I got the termination email. Violation of company policies. No hearing. No second chance. Just like that. 6 years erased. I could have given up. I almost did. Depression hit hard. The kind that doesn't feel like sadness, just a heavy fog over everything. The days blurred. Rent was due. Interviews weren't coming through. People who said they had my back stopped answering my calls. But then, something happened. I went to drop off a USB drive I'd forgotten to return to the office. One of the interns, a sweet, nervous guy named Kyle, bumped into me near the elevator. "Ethan," he whispered, looking around. I shouldn't be saying this, but I know you didn't do it." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Kyle looked panicked, like someone might be watching. "Ben told me to fake some reports a while back. I didn't know it was for this. I thought it was just for client performance stuff. But I saw your name on some of the files. I think he set you up." I stared at him, my hands shaking. This was it. Proof. Or at least, the start of it. But before I could say anything else, the building manager stepped out of the stairwell, and Kyle turned and ran like he was on fire. Now, I had something. A tiny crack in the wall Ben had built around his lies. But how do you take down a man like Ben? Someone so polished, so manipulative, someone who could forge documents, convince HR, and fire someone with fake evidence, and still look like the hero. You don't rush it. You plan. So that's what I did. I spent the next 3 months building a case, talking to people quietly, tracing every project I'd worked on, every email, every document. I dug through company systems I still had ghost access to, things Ben never thought to close. And what I found, let's just say, Ben had done this before. To someone else. Her name was Jenna. She used to be a project lead. Disappeared from the company about 6 months after Ben joined. I found her on LinkedIn. She was working at a bakery now. I messaged her. She didn't respond. So I went there in person. She was stacking muffins. When she saw me, her face froze. "You too?" she asked quietly. We sat down for coffee. She told me everything. How Ben had used her work, turned the team against her, and then made up some excuse to get her fired right before a big bonus cycle. HR swept it under the rug. She tried to fight it, but gave up after realizing she didn't have proof. But now, between what Jenna knew, and what Kyle had said, and what I'd found, I was building a monster of a case. And I wasn't just going to get my job back. I was going to make Ben lose everything. Only, I had no idea the next step would almost destroy me. Because 2 days later, someone tried to break into my apartment. They didn't take anything. They just trashed my desk. And on my desk was a single note. It read, "You don't want to do this. Walk away." And that's when I realized. Ben knew. And he wasn't playing games anymore. I stared at the note, the words sinking into my skin like poison. "You don't want to do this. Walk away." I read it again. And again. My hands trembled as I picked it up, flipping it over, nothing on the back. Just that one line, typed in bold capital letters, centered perfectly on the page like it came from an office printer. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. My stomach twisted into a knot. Whoever did this didn't steal anything. They didn't even touch my TV, my laptop, or the emergency cash I kept hidden in the kitchen drawer. No, they went straight for the desk. My workspace. My documents. The files I'd been quietly collecting. And now they were gone. All of them. The flash drives. The printed emails. The notes from my meetings with Jenna. The backups I had tucked away in the drawer. Gone. Everything wiped clean. Except the note. It was a message. Loud and clear. "Back off. Or next time, it gets worse." I sat down on my torn couch and stared at the wall. For a while, I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That my ex-boss maybe broke into my apartment because I maybe had dote on him that I maybe wasn't supposed to have? It would sound crazy. Like paranoia. But I wasn't crazy. Because I knew. Ben knew. And now he was warning me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time a car passed, I flinched. Every shadow made me jump. I kept the kitchen light on and sat with a baseball bat across my lap, just in case. By morning, I had only one thought in my mind. He wants me scared. He wants me to quit. But if I quit, he wins. That was the moment I made up my mind. I wasn't just going to bring Ben down. I was going to burn every fake layer he'd wrapped around himself. I was going to make sure the truth came out in front of everyone, publicly, loudly, and permanently. But I needed help. Real help. So I called the only person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, my older brother, Josh. Josh was a former Marine, now working as a private investigator in Oregon. He was the kind of guy who didn't just walk into a room, he owned it, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, and had that quiet kind of calm that made you feel like everything was under control. When I told him what had happened, he didn't say much at first. Just listened. Then he asked me one question. Are you sure you want to go to war with this guy? I didn't even hesitate. Yes. Then pack a bag. Come stay with me for a while. You'll be safer here. So I did. That night, I took a cab to the station and caught a midnight bus to Portland. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friends. I didn't post anything online. I just disappeared. Josh picked me up at the terminal, tossed my duffel in the back of his truck, and handed me a hot coffee. All right, he said. Let's blow this guy's life up. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. We got to work immediately. Josh helped me rebuild what I lost. He taught me how to track digital footprints, recover deleted files, and encrypt everything. He even got in touch with a cybersecurity expert he knew, a woman named Tara who used to work with the FBI. Tara was a genius. She recovered fragments of old emails from my phone's cache, found metadata buried in image files, pieced together timestamps that proved someone had logged into my company account from a location I wasn't even near at the time. Ben was sloppy, arrogant, even. And now, we had something real. Even better, we got Kyle to talk again. Josh met him in person, off company grounds, at a quiet diner on the edge of town. Kyle was shaking when he showed up, but Josh had a way of calming people down. Kyle told us everything. How Ben used him to fabricate logs. How he made Kyle install spyware on my office computer. How he made Kyle delete certain files from the company's servers and then replace them with edited versions. Ben promised him a raise, a promotion, even hinted at covering his student loan debt. Kyle had gone along with it, but the guilt had been eating him alive. He gave us a copy of the internal messages between him and Ben, screenshots, audio clips, everything. He even gave us a USB Ben gave him, labeled backups. Turns out, Ben had been arrogant enough to keep blackmail material, not just on me, but on other employees too. Ben wasn't just sabotaging careers. He was running a private empire of leverage, using people's secrets to control them, manipulate them. He even had files on the CEO's son, personal stuff. It was deeper than we thought. Josh looked at me one night while going through the files and said, "This isn't just about your job anymore. This guy's dangerous." He was right. So we went bigger. Tara put together a digital dossier, a master file of every piece of evidence we had, organized, timestamped, and cross-referenced. Josh got in touch with a lawyer friend in Seattle who specialized in corporate corruption cases. And I reached out to Jenna and asked her if she'd be willing to testify, not in court, but in public. She agreed. Then came the next step, exposure. We could have gone to the police. We could have gone to HR. But we both knew how that would go. Ben was protected. HR was part of the system. The legal path would take years, and even then, he might slither out of it with some expensive lawyer. So instead, we went to the press. We reached out to a local investigative journalist, a woman named Monica who had taken down 2 city councilmen in a bribery scandal the year before. We gave her everything. She spent 3 weeks verifying it all, double-checking sources, interviewing Kyle, Jenna, even former employees Ben had screwed over at other companies. Then finally, one sunny Tuesday morning, exactly 5 months after I got fired, it happened. The article dropped. Front page of Seattle Metro Daily. Title: Vice President of Tech Firm Accused of Sabotage, Employee Blackmail, and Fraud. And under it, a massive photo of Ben, mid-smile, in one of his smug conference room speeches. The internet exploded. The company's name trended on Twitter. Former employees came out of the woodwork. Clients started pulling out. The CEO had to make a public statement. And Ben, he was suspended pending investigation. 2 days later, he was fired. But that wasn't even the end. Because what I didn't know was that the company was already under quiet scrutiny by the IRS. Turns out, Ben had been inflating project numbers, not just for credit, but for bonuses. Massive, 6-figure bonuses that crossed into felony territory. And once the IRS connected the dots from our report, they launched a formal investigation. Ben was arrested 3 weeks later at his house in Bellevue. His assets were frozen. His accounts seized. His wife, who had just had a baby 2 months before, filed for divorce and moved back to California. His life unraveled, one thread at a time. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. Because one night, just after I got a new job offer and was finally starting to rebuild my life, I got a call. It was from a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, a voice whispered, "You really think it's over, Ethan?" Then the line went dead. And that's when I knew. Ben might have lost everything. But this fight wasn't over yet. I dropped the phone. Literally, it slipped from my hand and clattered against the hardwood floor, screen facing up. That voice, it was low, rough, and had that unmistakable venom behind it. A whisper soaked in rage. The kind you never forget. I didn't recognize the number. Burner phone, maybe. Blocked caller ID. I wasn't sure. But the message was clear. Ben might have been fired. Arrested. Exposed to the world. But he wasn't done with me. Josh heard the thud from the other room and came sprinting out, shirtless, still chewing a protein bar. What happened? I pointed to the phone like it was a live grenade. He called me. I muttered. Ben. I think it was him. Josh didn't even blink. He picked up the phone, scrolled through the last call log, and took a screenshot. Then he handed it back. Good. That's evidence. Did he threaten you? Not directly. Josh nodded. He's panicking. That's a last-ditch power move. He's got nothing left, and he's reaching for whatever's still in his reach. But I didn't feel brave. I felt small. Cold. Shaken to my bones. This wasn't some fantasy where the bad guy goes to jail and life goes back to normal. No, this was real life. And in real life, bad people don't give up so easily, not when they've tasted power. Not when they've lived their entire lives manipulating others. Ben wasn't just evil. He was a strategist. A liar with a long reach and zero morals. And if he still had one card left to play, he'd use it. I didn't sleep that night. Again. Josh moved his Glock from the safe into the drawer beside his bed, just in case. He also installed an extra camera over the garage and double-checked the locks. I tried to act normal, but I could tell he was on edge too. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No more calls. No messages. No strange cars outside the house. No emails. Nothing. It was like Ben had just vanished off the face of the earth. Until I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name on the front in shaky handwriting. I opened it slowly, heart pounding. Inside, it was a single sheet of lined paper, folded in thirds. I unfolded it. It wasn't a threat this time. No message. No rant. It was a picture. A photo of me, taken from behind, walking to Josh's mailbox 3 days ago. My head slightly turned. The house in the background. The timestamp printed in red on the bottom right corner. I nearly threw up. He was watching me. Somewhere out there. Ben, or someone working for him, had been close enough to take this photo. Maybe hiding in the trees across the street. Maybe in a parked car. But close enough to see me. Josh lost it when he saw the photo. He called in a favor from a buddy who worked in local law enforcement. They filed a harassment report, and we submitted everything. The photo, the voicemail, the phone number. Josh even set up a digital trail trap with Tara's help to catch whoever was sending these. Then he sat me down and said something I'll never forget. "Ethan, we're done reacting. It's time we go on offense again." I nodded. I was tired of being scared. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of letting Ben write the story. So we launched a plan. Step 1. Find out who else Ben still had under his thumb. Josh figured that if Ben was still playing games from the shadows, he had to be using someone. Maybe a former co-worker. Maybe a friend. Maybe even a hired hand. But no one acts alone at that level of manipulation. We dug through the old employee chat logs, checked LinkedIn connections, pulled phone records, and started matching dates. Tara cross-referenced the IP logs from when my files were wiped and found something odd, a login attempt on my old company profile just 2 days ago. It came from a city 30 miles away. The account had been deactivated, but someone tried using my old credentials to access the system. That meant they had my old passwords. And there was only one person who could have had access to that level of detail besides Ben. Kyle. I didn't want to believe it at first. Kyle had helped us, confessed everything, given us the USB. But when Josh pulled Kyle's name through a data check, he found something strange. Kyle had recently come into a large sum of money. Large. He'd paid off all his loans, bought a new car, moved into a condo, all within the last 6 weeks. I felt sick. Josh wasn't surprised. You said it yourself, he reminded me. Ben knows how to manipulate people. He probably offered Kyle hush money to keep feeding him information. So, we set a trap. We called Kyle and asked if he could meet, said there were new developments, and that we might need his help again. He hesitated at first, then agreed to meet us at the same diner from before. Josh set up a small audio recorder under the table and kept his phone filming from the cup holder in his jacket. Kyle looked nervous, real nervous. When I asked if he'd been in contact with Ben, he flat out lied. No, he said. Haven't heard from him since the story broke. Why? Josh just raised an eyebrow. Oh, just curious. You know, weird that someone used Ethan's login info 2 days ago. Especially since it only works from inside the company's old server system. Wonder who'd still have that access. Kyle froze, then stammered something about it not being him and that maybe IT was doing maintenance. Josh smiled. That shark smile of his. We'll find out. Just wanted to give you a chance to clear your name first. Kyle left 10 minutes later, sweating through his shirt. That night, we got our confirmation. Tara traced the IP address from the break-in attempt and ran it against Kyle's home network. Match. 100% confirmed. He was still working with Ben. And Weiss, feeding him our locations, our plans, even recordings from our previous calls. Kyle had turned. But instead of confronting him, we kept him close. Let him think he was winning. Because that was the next step in our plan. Bait the spider out of his web. Josh and I faked a final plan. We staged a call where I told Tara I was flying out to California for a surprise media interview with a national TV station to talk about Ben's case. We knew Kyle would pass that on to Ben. We even bought fake plane tickets. And sure enough, it worked. 2 days later, the news broke that someone had leaked internal company documents to the press, documents I had never seen before. Documents that painted me as the mastermind behind the whole scheme. It was a full-blown smear campaign. But this time, we were ready. Because the leak, it came from Kyle's computer, and Josh had installed remote tracking 2 nights earlier. Every keystroke, every upload, every message. We recorded it all. And then we hit back. We sent everything to Monica, the journalist who had broken the Feist story. This time, she published part 2 of the story. Whistleblower targeted and coordinated harassment campaign, ex-employee implicated. Screenshots, audio, GPS logs. It was all there. Kyle was fired from his new job within hours. And Ben was slapped with a second set of charges, this time for witness tampering, harassment, and attempted cyber fraud. But just when we thought it was finally over, something else happened. The FBI called. They wanted to talk to me. Apparently, Ben's laptop, which had been seized during the IRS raid, had something much darker on it. Something they wouldn't tell me over the phone. I stayed at the screen. FBI. I looked at Josh. He gave me a look that said everything. This just got a whole lot bigger.